This is the Wrestling Old Head. You have entered the portal of pro wrestling.
What the world is watching.
Was this the worst pay-per-view that TNA has ever put on, or is the internet looking at it from a different lens? Let's talk about it. What's up, you guys? It's the Wrestling Old Head here in the portal of pro wrestling. I've had a couple of days to sit on this, and I actually went back and rewatched a TNA Slammiversary, and I really wanted to talk about my thoughts on the show as a whole, but also about the internet reaction to the pay-per-view and where certain people might be skewed on the overall branding and image of TNA as it is currently in today's day and age. Now, they have a partnership with the WWE. This is long-standing partnership, very similar to what they did with AEW, albeit a slight difference is that WWE has actually been promoting TNA on their television program. Now, most recently, this past Monday on WWE Raw, Trick Williams was out cutting a promo. I watch it, and I'm not sure if this aired or if this was on the Netflix exclusive. So I'm not really sure if a lot of people got to see this, but Trick Williams was cutting a promo with Vic Joseph, NXT commentator, and he had the TNA World Championship with him, which I think was pretty historic for the WWE to have the TNA World Championship on their program. So, these are things that WWE has been doing in order to, show, goodwill towards TNA. Now, as far as this pay-per-view goes, I'm going to bury the lead a little bit. JC Jane and Trick Williams, NXT superstars, walked out of the pay-per-view with their respective world championships. Knockout champion JC Jane just won the championship from Masha Slamovich. Trick Williams retained the TNA World Championship by beating Joe Hendry. And the hometown hero of the evening when they were in Elmont, New York, just outside of Long Island. And the one that everybody wanted to win, Mike Santana. So a lot has been talked about this event. There's been a lot of criticism about the way that the event was as a whole, but also about the booking decisions. Here's the thing with the WWE's partnership with TNA. The WWE is not trying to make TNA the top 2 promotion in the United States of America. I don't think that's their goal. I don't think they want to be competitive with TNA. I don't think they're trying to bolster TNA up so that they can be competition. I don't think that's the goal. I think the goal with this partnership is to show other companies that are outside of the umbrella of the WWE that they can work with each other, that they can do things that help build their brand, but only to a certain extent. That's my opinion looking in at it. Hey, and as I've said in the preview of this Slammiversary, I'm not a regular watcher of TNA. I mean, I'm not Ango. All respect to Ango. Ango, if you go check out his channel, he is an avid TNA fan. He knows more about TNA than I would ever know about TNA. I used to watch TNA back when they were doing weekly pay-per-views. I have had a cursory knowledge of TNA since they let Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan go. After that, they've gone through several different iterations. They've had Don Callis and Scott D'Amore, and they really shrunk their product after a while, and now they're building back with a new brand under Carlos Silva. So I've watched TNA from a distance. I've read results. I've tried to keep up with the product, but I just haven't had time to really sink my teeth into the product and follow it. There have been some things that I've really liked about it. There's been some things that have kind of been interesting and iffy and whatnot, but I've been watching TNA here and there since its inception, okay? And lately what I've been seeing from them is that they're trying to build themselves, but I don't think they're trying to be the number 2 promotion in the United States of America. I just don't. And I don't think the WWE would benefit from doing something like that. I think this partnership is to show that they can have goodwill, that they can give them a little bit of a boost, but not too much to where they're becoming competition. That's my opinion. So looking at it through those eyes, I thought Slammiversary was an interesting show. It wasn't the show of the year, in my opinion, but I don't think it was the worst pay-per-view that I've seen this year. And I think there were some bright spots. And I think on the other side of this, going into Bound for Glory, I think they're going to really try to put on a memorable show. And I think the WWE wants to help them do that. I don't think WWE wants to help them be number 2, but maybe they want to help them be some competition for the AEW. NXT is their developmental program, okay? NXT is designed to build the future greats that are going to walk into the main roster of SmackDown and Raw and eventually become legends. Look at Tiffany Stratton. She came from NXT. She was built from the bottom up, and now she is a superstar, okay? Rhea Ripley. She came from the developmental of NXT, and she has built herself out to being one of the greats in the women's division. They've been knocking it out of the park with the women's division. And for the men's division, Braun Breaker came up through the NXT development. He's going to be the man pretty soon. And I don't mean Becky Lynch man. I mean, he is going to be a top guy in the WWE. They are making sure that in the next few years, half a decade, Braun Breaker will be main eventing WrestleMania. No doubt about it. And then you look at the guys that are coming up. Obafemi, Trick Williams, Javon Evans, Ethan Page, Ricky Saints. Those guys are going to be household names in the WWE in the not too distant future. NXT is not designed to go head to head with a major wrestling company like AEW week in and week out. Although they have been putting up a heck of a fight. And if you've been watching, NXT and AEW have been neck and neck in the ratings. And I think it's because there's a lot of eyes on the product right now with their partnership with TNA. And I think that some of the stuff that they're doing has been drawing in casual fans and fans alike that want to see. This is the college of the WWE. This is college ball right here. They want to see them before they go to the pros. And I think there's some interest in that. So I feel like in the future, TNA can be built up to be the brand that also fights AEW. And I think the WWE would love to see that. But I think they'll put a halt to their partnership if TNA decides to break away and say we want to be an active competitor and we want to be the number 2 promotion going in to be number 1. I don't think TNA has that anymore. I don't think they're going to be capable of doing what they tried to do 11, 12 years ago when they were going head to head with Raw and they had all the legends and all the big stars and stuff. And I think somebody was mentioning, I don't know if it was Ango, but somebody was mentioning that even when they had Sting and Hulk Hogan and Jeff Hardy and Kurt Angle and Booker T and Scott Steiner and Kevin Nash and AJ Styles and Samoa Joe and all of these guys, they still weren't doing 7,000, 8,000 fans in those buildings. I mean, TNA Slammiversary just had the largest attendance that they've had since 2013, and they beat it by like a few hundred. So there's definitely some interest there for the fans. They want to see TNA right now, but they're also really interested in this partnership and to see where it goes. So the WWE has something with that, but I don't think that the WWE is confident that TNA is going to try and surpass them or even get to a point where they become active competitors again. So I think this simply is a partnership that is in good faith and in goodwill, and it's not designed to put TNA on an upper tier level, and nor do I feel like the guys that are running TNA feel like that's going to happen. Just my opinion. Like I said, not an expert. But some of the things that I want to break down from Slammiversary that I personally enjoyed: Cedric the Entertainer. I said it again, guys. I said it again. Cedric the Entertainer. He wrestled Mustafa Ali. Cedric Alexander wrestled Mustafa Ali. I thought they banged it out. They had a great opening matchup there. Those guys have great chemistry with one another. Mustafa Ali almost killed himself like twice in this match, and I really like Mustafa Ali. I think he reminds me of Seth Rollins a lot. They came from the same area in the Midwest in Chicago, and there's a lot of parallels between those guys, and I think Mustafa Ali has really come into his own. I watched an interview where he talked about Adam Copeland helping him with promos and getting his inflections right and being able to speak a certain way when he's cutting promos. and he learned a lot from that, and I think the guy is sensational. I wish that he would have more prominent role in TNA, because I would love to see him interact with some of the guys from NXT and have some really good matches. The match that I would really like to see Mustafa Ali have is against Javon Evans. I think those two could put on a classic matchup if given the opportunity. But Mustafa Ali got the win here. And he's going to hopefully move up in the card, challenge for the international championship. That would be something I would be interested in seeing him do, and even eventually challenge for the TNA World Championship. He can also be a good X Division guy. I mean, a match with Leon Slater would be really, really good. There were a couple of production errors in TNA's at Slammiversary. One, most notable was the Elegance brand cutting a promo backstage, and they were notorious. They were infamous now because it's gone viral, where the production guy was counting them down. That's a huge red flag. Okay, that didn't look good. I know those guys in the production crew have probably had sleepless nights since that happened, because that is a big blunder. That's a pretty amateurish blunder there, especially on a big night where all these eyes are on the product. And if I'm not mistaken, and if anybody that was there at Slammiversary was there, let me know if this happened, but it seemed like the people in the crowd was seeing it on the television screen or the big TNA Tron or the big monitor. And, if they saw that, I'm sure they had a good laugh, because that was pretty bad. But that blunder aside, they had Indy Hartwell against Tessa Blanchard. I'm not too familiar with Indy Hartwell. I like Indy Hartwell a lot. I think she's got something there. She had good poise. I felt her animosity towards Tessa Blanchard, although I don't feel like there's real animosity, but I may be wrong in that. But I really got that urge. I got that sense that there was a real hatred between those two, and it worked. Tessa was smacking the hell out of Indy Hartwell. At one point, Indy Hartwell's ears were like freaking red as light bulbs, for Christmas tree decorations or something. It was crazy. And there seemed to be some real hatred between those two, and I liked that. I thought that came across well. Tessa Blanchard, say what you will about her in her personal life, the way that she conducts herself in the public eye, she is a great professional wrestler. She can sell well. She knows how to work the crowd. She knows how to bring the best out of opponents. I loved her match with Jordynne Grace before Jordynne Grace bowed out and went to NXT. And I think it was the right move to have Indy Hartwell win here with no interference, which I thought was interesting. There was a post-match angle where Indy was cutting a promo. Gia Miller was, interviewing her after her win outside of the ring in the ringside area. And Tessa attacked Indy Hartwell and then attacked Gia Miller. To me, that sets up that Gia Miller, who is a professional wrestler, but she's been doing, backstage interview work for TNA. It feels to me that we're going to get Gia Miller against Tessa Blanchard out of this, or at the very least a tag match where Victoria Crawford teams with Tessa against Indy Hartwell and Gia Miller. We'll see how that plays out. But that was the first thing that came to my mind. It's like, why would you attack a backstage interviewer unless there was going to be something that comes from that, very similar to Pat McAfee and whatnot. So I feel like we might be getting that down the line. And for now, they're keeping Tessa away from the Knockouts title, at least for now. Now, I'm sure they're working on establishing a good relationship with Tessa. They want to test the waters. Last time Tessa Blanchard was in TNA, she no-showed a big event as TNA World Champion, and I'm sure that wasn't a good look. And I'm sure the top execs and the guys in the booking committee are looking at that, and they don't want a situation where this happens again. So I'm sure they're just trying to see if they can trust Tessa, and so I think eventually, if she is able to maintain her professionalism and work through some of her mishaps from when she was younger, a few years back, then eventually she can get to the Knockouts division. Personally, I would love to see her and Charlotte Flair work. I've always wanted to see those two work together ever since I noticed Charlotte growing into prominence in the WWE and Tessa at her height in TNA. I always wanted to see the two converge, with their father's history, Ric Flair and Tully Blanchard and even Magnum TA. I would really like to see those three involved in some fashion, even if they're at ringside or even if they're in the crowd. I would love to see them watch Charlotte Flair against Tessa Blanchard. I think it would be a historic match. Two generational talents like Charlotte and Tessa, even if they're a tag team at first and then they build towards an epic singles match, I think those two can tear the house down. Face Charlotte against heel Tessa, take my money. That's just me. So, I thought the right person won with Indy Hartwell. I'd like to see more of Indy and where they go from here, building her up. And I don't think that she's out of the water against Tessa at all. And like I said, I think they insert Gia Miller into a wrestling scenario with Tessa, even if it is just a tag match. And I thought my interest was piqued. Now, the crowd was not into that match. The crowd was calling Tessa a racist, and outside of calling her a racist, they were very quiet, and I also think that affected the match. Now, one of the things I noticed with Indy Hartwell is it seemed like she was affected by that. It seemed like she was a little rattled a couple of times. It seemed like it took away from the way that she worked the match. Now, I could be wrong, but I don't think she was expecting that. And so I think that hurt the way that she worked that match. And that was unfortunate because, I like Indy Hartwell a lot. And I'm really curious to see where she goes in TNA. And the sky's the limit with her. She's a young talent. NXT, it didn't work out, but they can always go back to bringing her in if she starts to rise to prominence and knocks it out of the park in TNA. I mean, it's a possibility, right? Leon Slater and Moose had the match of the night, in my opinion. Leon Slater is a freaking talent. Scott D'Amore he's got a knack for talent, and I believe he discovered Leon Slater and brought him in at a young age, just before he left TNA. And Leon Slater, if he continues this, he has all the makings to be the future of TNA. X Division champion, youngest X Division champion, right above Amazing Red, who was at the time the youngest before Leon Slater won the X Division championship. I hate to bring up Javon Evans again, but man, those two, there's a lot of parallels. Very young talent, athletically gifted, sky's the limit type of guys. Once they start getting older and putting on a little size, but don't lose their speed and their versatility, they can be generational talents, man. They really could. And imagine those two in the ring together. Now you're talking about a match that WWE and TNA could put on that could really steal the show. And I bet you TNA would like to get that match in their brand, on their pay-per-view. I think they would love to have that match for the X Division Championship even. I think that would be huge, huge stuff. Hardy's winning the TNA World Tag Team Championships, beating the Nemeths, the Rascals, Myron Reed taking over for Trey Miguel, teaming with Zach Brents, and the First Class, AJ Francis and Casey Navarro. Can we put to bed AJ Francis blunder on SmackDown where he botched that dive over the top rope? Because he did some stuff in this match that I would rather see highlights of that than his blunder. He did a moonsault off the top of a ladder. AJ Francis, he's a big dude. He's a tall, big dude, and he did a moonsault off the ladder and didn't even freaking hesitate, and I know nobody caught him. I mean, they parted the Red Seas when he got off that ladder. They were like, you ain't gonna turn me into a pancake. He was up there, man. He was like 3 rungs from the top or something like that, and he hit that moonsault, and I mean, he didn't break nothing. I mean, it was awesome. It was a highlight for me. And then he was on the ladder in the ring. They pushed the ladder over, and he jumped over the top rope and crotched himself on one of the rungs in the ladder as the ladder broke. I mean, that could have been real bad. That could have been something that would have been really unfortunate, but luckily he came out okay. Those were 2 spots, 2 crazy, insane bumps I would have never thought AJ Francis would have been doing. So all the props to AJ Francis. He did some really good stuff there. And then they had the ladder that came down from the rafters, old school ladder. It's a rope ladder. You know, it wasn't the stationary fold outs. You know, those are two things I haven't seen before. You know, that ladder that propels from the ceiling that they used to use on helicopters and that Batman used back in the 50s and 60s that none of you young cats ever remember. And they haven't used that extension ladder that just goes straight up and it extends. But I know that that's more of a difficult thing to do because you need something to position that ladder so that it would stay because it's not a fold out. Those were two scenarios that I haven't seen played out. And, cross that off because they are able to do that. Jeff Hardy, very creative spot with that. I thought overall that was a really fun match, probably my second favorite of the night. And then of course I went over the fact that Leon Slater and Moose had the match of the night, but I failed to talk about AJ Styles coming out. Now, Carlos Silva recently came out and said that they had to pivot from what they were planning originally, and I don't know if it was because they were planning a match, and WWE felt because SummerSlam was coming up and they have Dominic Mysterio tapped to wrestle AJ Styles for the Intercontinental Championship, that maybe they didn't want him wrestling on that show. Maybe, I don't think they lacked confidence in what AJ Styles can do to take care of himself in that match, but maybe whoever his dance partner would be, they just didn't want a scenario where AJ would get hurt, right? So I think instead they did a really good job of bringing AJ out to congratulate Leon Slater and give him the rub, put him over as the future of this business. And who better than one of the greatest TNA X Division champions, TNA World Champions that they've ever had, one of the greatest wrestlers TNA has ever had in AJ Styles. I thought that was nice. It was touching. It was classy. And Moose, of course, passing the torch, if you will, to Leon Slater, I thought was a nice touch as well. So it's nice to see AJ Styles back in TNA. I've been petitioning since I've had this channel, and even before I started recording on this channel, to get AJ Styles in the TNA Hall of Fame. Maybe that is the move for Bound for Glory. I would love to see him get in the Hall of Fame, and I'm hoping that happens. And hey, look, I'm still holding out hope for one more TNA match for AJ Styles. It's a dream. We'll see if it comes true. AJ Styles against Frankie Kazarian. AJ Styles against, Amazing Red. That would be cool too. Amazing Red's still out there. He works for House of Glory. Maybe make that happen. Or maybe AJ Styles against some of the younger talent. I'd still like to see AJ Styles against Trick Williams as well. But I'm not going to get into fantasy booking right now. AJ Styles' last match in TNA, but I would just love to see that. Bully Ray also came out after the ladder match and spoke about the history with the Hardys. God, it's been 25 years. 25 years since they had their tables match, the Dudleys and the Hardys in the Royal Rumble. And now they're going to have one last match. Devon wasn't there, but Bubba, Bully Ray, Mr. Bully Ray, came out on his Twitter and said that Devon will be there and will be wrestling. So it won't be a replacement partner, some pseudo Devon for the night. It will be Bully Ray and Devon Dudley against Matt and Jeff Hardy at Bound for Glory. Now that's going to be historic for many reasons, and I can't wait to see that. Now I hope those guys don't kill each other, but I'm sure they're going to do what they can to have a show of the night, the match of the night rather, and even the show of the year. You know, they're going to try their hardest to really put on a memorable match on a memorable pay-per-view. And Trick Williams, as I said earlier in the video, retained against Joe Hendry and Mike Santana. He feigned injury on his knee. And then wait for the right moment with Mike Santana. I think he spun the block on Joe Hendry. Trick threw Santana out of the ring and covered Joe Hendry to continue his reign as TNA World Champion. Now, a lot of people were upset at that because they felt like they failed to pull the trigger at the right moment by putting the title on Mike Santana in his home state in front of all of his friends and family and fans alike. And it seemed like the internet was really getting behind Mike Santana and hoping that he would have his shining moment, and they just didn't do it. Now, I understand people that feel like they should have pulled the trigger because that seemed like the right thing to do. A lot of people felt like they rushed the Joe Hendry world title reign because of his popularity, but you got to admit, he was losing for like 6 months before he got his TNA World Championship, and he started to lose a lot of momentum. And some would even say that his momentum hasn't been the same since losing for that 6 months before winning that championship. So maybe they want to rethink this idea of making Mike Santana wait 6 months to even a year before he wins his championship. If you ask me, I really fully believe that he will go to Bound for Glory and win the championship. But in Lowell, Massachusetts, I mean, Bound for Glory is a big event, but I mean, I just don't know if that was the right place to do it. But as I've stated before at the beginning of this video, TNA is not trying to beat the WWE. They might be trying to get close to AEW, but this isn't TNA of 2013. This isn't TNA of 2008. This is a new TNA, and the way that they're branding this event, they're branding for their company, I don't think is to establish themselves as greats. They're going to just put on great pay-per-views. They're going to do their thing on the television, hopefully get a network deal, but they're not going to try to, be a top 2 promotion in the United States of America. I mean, that I just don't see. I think with the sale and the acquisition, I think that the people that sold the company, or that acquired the company rather, are trying to get their money back. And then once they get their money back and they feel like they built the brand to where it's opt-in for a sale, they'll probably try to sell the company. That's my opinion. And when they do sell the company, when they do put it out on the auction block, the WWE will be right there. And if I had my money on that as well, I think that Tony Khan would also try to put his money down and maybe boost the price up so the WWE will outbid for it. And that's just my opinion on that. I think that the TNA library it's a library to have. I don't know, I mean, I don't think it's the most sought after library, but I think it's a library to have. So that's where I see it. I think TNA is only going to be as good as they can be so that they can be positioned, so that they can put it on the auction block and get some good money back for it, get their return on investment. And this is the company that bought them. I think that's their mindset. That's why they have a guy like Carlos Silva at the helm, and they didn't bring in anybody they didn't keep Scott D'Amore. They let Gail Kim go. I mean, they're letting all of the guys that really were running the company and doing great things that could have potentially made it a number 2 company. They let them go. And now they're working with the WWE, which could have been a direct competitor, but now there's a partnership. So, I mean, that's just for me looking in, but I really want to know what you guys think. But before I say that, before I let you guys have the floor, overall, it wasn't as bad as the internet is saying, man. Go watch it yourself, and you let me know what you think. But pay-per-view of the year, not in my opinion. There was too much great stuff going on this year. But they did their best, and they had some blunders. Nobody's perfect. But yeah, this is one of those things, where you watch movies, you go on Rotten Tomatoes and see what people think of the movies, and you're like, oh, this movie must be crap. But then you watch it and you go, what were they watching? It's one of those scenarios. Just watch it for yourself and, formulate your own opinion. Don't just go off of what people say, because a lot of people have, ulterior motives and whatnot, and their programming is different than maybe yours was. Maybe your type of wrestling is different than theirs. You never know. I think it's important to go out and get an idea of what you think of it for yourself, and don't always count on other people's opinions to sway your judgment one way or another. But that's just my opinion. You guys let me know what you think in the comments. What'd you think of Slammiversary? Would you like to hear more stuff from me on TNA? Hey, you guys let me know. Thumbs up on the way out, you guys. Thanks for coming out again. Enjoying professional wrestling with me here in the portal. And as always, you guys, stay tuned for more.